Hey, everybody. Really intriguing and important discussion around cybersecurity today, talking about how security teams can continuously test their defenses as threats become faster, smarter, and increasingly automated through AI with Ridge Security. Home, how are you?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks so much for joining. Really important topic today. Before that, maybe introduce yourself and your background, and how do you describe Ridge Security these days?
Yeah, Hom Bahmanyar. I'm Global Enablement Officer here at Rich Security. Rich Security is a leader in AI-powered continuous security validation and exposure management. We were founded in 2020. We have a global reach across all continents with customers in various industries such as financials, healthcare, government agencies, telecom, etc.
Amazing work. Let's talk about security teams, something you know a lot about as you work with them every day. They're buried in alerts. What is the problem that you're solving around this continuous security validation challenge?
Sure. Information overload is one of the key pain points that we hear from our customers. We've been hearing for the past few years. There's just too much data. There's too much telemetry from variety of different security solutions that have been deployed by our customers. So to take one concrete example, if you look at vulnerability assessment tools, they detect and report a very large number of vulnerabilities. But at the end of the day, the customers tell us that they have a hard time identifying which vulnerabilities they should be prioritizing first. Which ones require immediate action, in other words. So we've learned that vulnerability score, the score that's assigned by the standards body to the vulnerability, that's not really the best way to prioritize vulnerabilities because, we see some vulnerabilities that are exploited in the wild and they have a medium score, counterintuitive there. So security validation puts the emphasis on prioritizing the vulnerabilities or misconfigurations based on whether they are exploitable or not. So you'd be surprised to see that out of large number of vulnerabilities that are reported by scanners, typically a very small percentage of them are exploitable in a given customer's environment. The other thing that we emphasize, in addition to exploitability, is whether the vulnerabilities are visible to threat actors, to the attackers, to the adversaries, in order for them to be prioritized. So if you have a vulnerability that is both exploitable and visible, then we prioritize that very highly. We say, this is just a matter of time before attackers can get to this. So this is high priority. It should be remediated soon. So we also say that we also emphasize to our customers that this prioritization should be done on a continuous basis. So it's not
Mm,
enough to do this exercise, every once in a while, because the IT environment continues to evolve, all the time on an ongoing basis, and the attack surface continues to expand. So to recap, if you want to stay ahead of the adversaries, it's really important to to perform continuous security validation so the exposures are detected and mitigated before they are discovered and exploited by the adversaries.
great points. And how is continuous security validation, um, different from what we've known with pen testing and vulnerability scanning for, a decade?
Sure. They're all related. So,
Mm,
vulnerability scanning basically lays the foundation. Vulnerabilities are discovered across the assets. And then penetration testing, which is part of what we do at Rich Security, takes those vulnerabilities and then it goes through the process of validating them. In other words, it tries to identify whether those vulnerabilities are exploitable or not, and whether they are visible or not. So if you don't do that latter part of validation, then you just end up, as I was saying earlier, with a very, very large body of vulnerabilities. And then it's just humanly impossible to to basically patch all vulnerabilities. So then you end up, in many cases, we have seen our customers just by default go with the score of the vulnerability. And as I was mentioning earlier, the score is not really the best way to do this because it doesn't reflect what the attackers out there are doing.
Interesting. Speaking of attackers, AI, of course, is changing everything, both how cyber attacks work as well as how cyber defense work. But what are you seeing in the marketplace right now in this battle?
Right. The threat landscape it's been evolving at such a rapid pace. We've never seen anything like this before. Like if you look at the past couple of years, and it just seems to continuously speed up. So I want to unpack this a little bit more. What exactly is the role of AI here? So to begin with, we see AI has been adopted across many industries. So why are they doing that? Basically, they are able to automate or semi-automate variety of workflows. And again, this is across all industries, financial institutions, banks, healthcare organizations, government
Hmm.
agencies, retail, they're all using AI. So when this happens, as a result of this, we see that the attack surface continues to grow. So what do I mean by that? Basically, the entry points for the attackers continues to grow. So that's the first angle. The second angle of the impact of AI on threat landscape has to do with the adversaries, the threat actors. So we see an incredible surge of AI-driven attacks now. So the adversaries are using AI to scale their actions. They're also operating at machine speed instead of at human speed. So what we see now is a larger number of attacks and a lot more efficient attacks thanks to AI. So the skill set required for the attackers has been going down because AI is doing a lot of the work for them. So that was the second angle, from the adversary's perspective. The third angle, which I find very interesting, very exciting actually, is in the context of the AI models, AI models, offensive security capability. So we see huge advances there. You probably heard that in April, we saw Claude Mythos, which is a model from
Hmm.
Anthropic, identify thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities. And it was able to do this across a wide range of products. For example, many, all well-known browsers, operating systems, and some of these zero-day vulnerabilities that were discovered were quite old. Some of them
Hmm.
had, they had survived decades of human review, and then suddenly they were caught by Mythos. So now, I want to mention one thing. These vulnerabilities have existed in software forever. But now what we see is the speed and the ease of finding them, which then leads to exploiting them, has changed significantly. So the offensive security work that used to take a specialist team, a team of human specialists, weeks to complete now can be done in hours using AI models. So, uh, so let me just recap one more time the three key points. So first is that across all major industries, attack surface continues to expand as they continue to make AI part of their workflow. Second point is that AI-driven attacks are happening now at machine speed. They're happening at scale, at machine speed, not at human speed. And the third point is major innovations, major advances in AI models, offensive security capabilities.
Wow, what a great summary of where we are. And as these offensive AI tools become more capable, as you described, and really off the shelf in many cases, are organizations testing their defenses often enough? I mean, the annual or quarterly assessments clearly aren't enough.
Correct, correct. Now the situation is like this. Organizations are suddenly facing a flood of new vulnerabilities. Of course, they were always used to vulnerability scanners generating huge reports, but now suddenly the number of vulnerabilities has started to skyrocket for them. To us, that means that more than ever before, security teams really need the help of solutions such as ours in order to properly prioritize those findings, those vulnerabilities, the software flaws. So that means from the large number of reported vulnerabilities, we want to help various organizations to identify the ones that are exploitable in that particular organization's specific environment, and then help them to basically take an action on them. So we've been innovating to harness the power of LLMs, models in our upcoming agentic AI offensive security platform, which is going to launch in a few weeks from now. And using that, we want to empower our customers to put their attentions on the vulnerabilities that really matter. So, one important factor in the harness is that it shouldn't be tied to one particular model, to one particular, one specific LLM. For example, we see some enterprises have been moving in the direction of adopting one particular vendor's model for their organization. They're standardizing on one particular vendor. Perhaps they get some sort of a discount, and then all employees are expected to just use that model. On the contrary, we also see some organizations that are choosing different models for different purposes.
Mm.
So they have the freedom to use whatever makes sense for each specific job. They use model from vendor X for one and model from vendor Y for another. So our agentic AI offensive security platform is designed to be model agnostic. We let our customers decide which model they want to use. Now, I should also mention one other fact here. There are a number of customers, typically government customers, sometimes financial customers. They have to operate in an air-gapped environment, and as a result of that, they cannot use any of the frontier models. So they have a requirement to basically run the model locally. So that means that a lot of times they're looking at open source, open weight models. So again, our harness has the flexibility to work with various open source and open weight models. And we've been testing with some of the most popular open source models. And we plan to share the benchmarks publicly because we know that a lot of times when customers are trying to examine solutions such as ours, they pay a lot of attention to the benchmarks. They want to make sure that the model that they use actually has the capability, give us what we need, give us our agentic AI platform what is needed in order to maximize the number of vulnerabilities that we can detect. Recently I was working with a bank overseas. They had a requirement to use a locally run model, and they're very particular. They said we are not allowed to use frontier models as much as they want
Mm.
to, but they're not allowed to use frontier models. And they were giving us the names of a couple of open source, open weight models that they are leaning towards. They're kind of the winners among the large number of models that they've been looking at. So now, in case you're wondering, an open weight model basically refers to an AI model where its trained parameters, that's what we call weights, are publicly available for others to use. So
Mm.
that they're quite popular. Um, so there is one other aspect of how organizations should act in the presence of this, ever evolving threat landscape I was mentioning earlier, and that is remediation. It has become clear now that remediation has become the bottleneck more than
Hmm.
ever before. Remediation was always the bottleneck. Now, with AI model advances in detecting huge number of vulnerabilities, more than ever before, it's obvious that remediation is has fallen behind. So there's a lot of good work also going on there. Um, for us, that's also very important. One thing I want to mention is that when it comes to remediating a vulnerability, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be patched. Of course, that's
Hmm.
the long-term solution. But the short-term solution that we always recommend to our customers is what's known as utilizing compensating controls. For example, use a firewall to prevent access for the time being to that vulnerability while you're working on a long-term solution, which involves
Hmm.
patching, patching the app or the OS, etc. Also, we are working actively with other vendors, for example, with major next-gen firewall vendor, in order to do an integration between our products, so that we make it easier for our joint customers to basically block those vulnerabilities short term while they're working on long term fixes.
Wow, you have a lot going on to say the least. Let's talk a little bit about autonomy and automation. What does that mean in the context of a continuous security validation platform? And why does it matter? Why is it important?
Great question. We hear these terms. For many years, everybody was talking about automation. Now everybody's talking about the transition from automation to autonomy. So before I start focusing on these terms, let me just talk a little bit about another transition that has been going on. This is a transition from traditional IT to what's known as agentic AI. So
Hmm.
traditional IT has been around for many years, and it is by definition very deterministic. Whereas now we are in the era of agentic AI, the underlying technology there is probabilistic. So I don't want to go into too much technical detail about this, but I just want to share some of the high level attributes of these. Traditional IT systems, they have a highly predictable behavior, and what they generate is very static in nature. Basically, what you give them as input, they use some logic which is deterministic, and then they generate some output accordingly. Very, very deterministic, very static in nature. Agentic AI systems, in comparison, they actually learn and they adapt depending on the environment that they're running in. So you can think of it as that environment basically becomes the context for them. So they learn from that environment, and then they adapt to it. The information that they have, they adapt it to that environment, and then they generate a dynamic output. So very, very different way of looking at things, solving problems. So again, traditional IT systems have been very static. Agentic AI systems are very adaptive. So, how are agentic AI systems adaptive? Adaptive. What makes them adaptive? One key attribute is that they are autonomous. So they're able to autonomously communicate with the environment. They can autonomously decide what tools to use to probe their environment. And then at the end of the day, they would learn from the environment. So they can absorb what we refer to as environmental feedback quite well. So, at the core of agentic AI systems is autonomy, because it's the autonomy that enables the series of agents to communicate with their environment using whatever tools, learn, and then adapt the knowledge that they have. For example, the knowledge of variety of attacks, that is all captured in an LLM, in an AI model, adapt that to, for example, a particular asset, for example, a particular Windows server or Linux server that is being tested right now. So in order to see that adaptive approach, autonomy is critical. So if you run one AI agent in two different environments, you're likely to see two different outputs. Why? Because it's the AI agent is able to adapt what it knows to the environment where it is placed, and then learn from it and dynamically produce a response that is relevant to that particular environment. So now let me take a moment to basically tie everything together. What does all of this have to do in the context of continuous security validation? So we have our upcoming product, which by the way is called RigGen. That's a multi-agent system. It has a series of specialist agents. Each specialist agent can act autonomously. Each specialist agent has access to a vast series of tools, and it autonomously decides what tools make sense for it to use in order to solve the problem that is given to it. So, in addition to that, each agent has access to a vast knowledge in the model. So I'm referring to the this knowledge that I'm talking about is basically the vast body of attack methods and techniques and tactics that have been used by real world hackers, and all of that information is captured somewhere in the model. So this information basically is part of the model, and the specialist agent is able to absorb thousands and thousands of attack types and attack techniques, far more than a human tester can do, and then apply this vast knowledge to one specific asset, and using the autonomous behavior that it has to decide what tools to use to communicate with that asset, to put all that vast knowledge in the perspective of that one asset and see whether any of those vulnerabilities are there or not. So the important thing is that it does it in an adaptive way. It
Hmm.
doesn't, like it is quite feasible for it, for our product Regen, to also discover vulnerabilities that had never been seen before. That means zero-day vulnerabilities. So that's a key attribute of an autonomous agentic AI platform such as Regen.
Brilliant. So let's boil it down. What does this all mean for overwhelmed security teams? Any feeling for how it can reduce noise, reduce impact, overwhelm, stress to those real teams on the front lines?
Sure. So, using a product such as Regen, basically the overloaded security team members can can use these solutions, as their sidekick. Like our
Hmm.
product Regen actually has a prompt interface, so we
Hmm.
envision the security expert to talk to it using natural languages. For example, they can use English here, they can use Polish in Poland, etc. And then they can tell it that, can you do penetration testing on such and such website or on such and such device? And they can also tell it specifically, again, in natural languages, can you focus primarily on this class of vulnerabilities? Because I heard that such and such vulnerabilities are being exploited in the
Hmm.
wild. Am I impacted or not? And then the agent will autonomously go on its own, do the work, and then there is a chat box that is open, so the security engineer can communicate with the agent throughout that process. It can give it additional instructions if needed. For example, if there's a multi-factor authentication that is used on the asset, the agent will say, I need a token." And then the security engineer would read the token off his or her mobile device and then type it into the chat box, and the
Hmm.
agent will pick up where it left off and will continue to do its work, and then at the very end generate a professional looking report. So it's a very different way of doing things, and we are so excited about helping our customers to basically find their way, find the signal among so much noise that they're in. And it's just an exciting opportunity, exciting time, and we're just very happy to be part of this.
Brilliant. So, real world stories are notoriously difficult to come by given the secrecy involved, but any anecdotes or stories that you can share, or maybe anonymized, on some of the gaps or weaknesses organizations discovered once they
Sure.
start down this new approach?
Right. Even though we haven't released this product yet, Region hasn't been released yet. It's slated to be released in a few weeks from now. But we made it available, like an early availability for some customers, some of our existing customers. And some of them gave us amazing feedback. They said that, they were able to find, for example, one of them was a bank, some SQL injections that had gone undetected in the past. They're very happy to see that just by deploying a RigGen in their environment, they were able to detect a number of SQL injections
Hmm.
that, for who knows for how long, they had gone undetected in the past. And
Wow.
again, we look forward to more stories like this. Again, the product hasn't released yet, so I'm sure that we will have more stories like this after.
I bet. We have Black Hat coming up. What are you hoping to see or learn or share at
Yes.
Black Hat this year on, everyday enterprise security?
Yeah, glad you brought that up. Actually, we plan to announce our product during Black Hat. It's a great audience there. All the ethical hackers and variety of security companies are present there. So we'll be announcing the availability of product there, and then we will be, of course, walking the floor. We feel that right now we are at the front of innovation, so we're walking the floor to see what everybody else is doing. And we are also, as I mentioned earlier, we are working with other security vendors such as next gen firewall vendors to do integration. We will continue that work. At the end of the day, our focus is what do we need to do to make our customers successful. So Black Hat is a great opportunity to meet with other vendors so that we can join forces to make our customers successful.
Well, congratulations on all the success so far, and look forward to hearing reports from Black Hat and from the field. Thanks so much for joining, Home.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Evan.
And thanks everyone for listening, watching. Also, check out our TV show, techimpact.tv on Bloomberg and Fox Business. Thanks, everyone.